Back-to-back Ks, and now some words here between Cavalli and Contreras, and both of the benches are emptying, so are the bullpens. And now it's getting physical. It's getting big-time physical. A lot of pushing and shoving here. Contreras has to be held back by about 5 guys. Cavalli with back-to-back strikeouts in the inning. In fact, he has struck out 4 in a row going back to last inning. Take a look.
Like he said, sit down, boy. Something like that. You could hear it right there.
Well, you can see Contreras saying, you talking to me?
Why are you talking to me? Cavalli feeling himself. We know that. But then someone else said something. He must have said more. You saw him jump up there and throw his helmet. He was just seeing red at that point.
Again, 10-2 was the final this afternoon at Fenway Park. So what once looked like a promising series, 5-game winning streak. Red Sox lose last night, lose today, lose 2 games within 24 hours. A 7-0 homestand potentially becomes 5-2. They now head out on the road, and all the momentum they had is gone. So this brings me to tonight's topics. Number 1, Wilson Contreras. Number 2, the trading deadline. And number 3, a base running play in last night's game that we didn't talk about at all today on Felger and Mazz that I want to get to, because quite possibly it involves the stupidest rule in baseball and maybe the stupidest rule in all of professional sports. We'll get to that a little bit later in the program. I'm like blown away by that, but I'll save that. But I want to start with Wilson Contreras, who had an eventful night last night at Fenway Park. He's had an eventful season with the Red Sox. And make no mistake, if you were voting today, Wilson Contreras is the MVP of the Red Sox. 617-779-0985. Here's my question to you, and I would love to hear from you tonight. Obviously, it's a holiday week. I'll be with you tonight. I'll be with you tomorrow and tomorrow night here on the Baseball Hour, tomorrow during Felger and Mazz. But I am curious as it relates to Wilson Contreras, and not with regard to the incident that happened with Cade Cavalli of the Nationals. Because I think, frankly, at the end of the day, there's a chance that both players are going to get suspended for that, for albeit entirely different reasons. And I would say both deservingly so, again, for entirely different reasons. Wilson Contreras for throwing his helmet, and Cade Cavalli for making the kind of comment that you should just not be able to make anymore anywhere. But we'll see how Major League Baseball weighs in on that. Nobody can, what is the right way to say this? Nobody can blame Wilson Contreras for getting upset after the reaction he got upon a strikeout last night, which I think was in the 3rd or 4th inning. I think it was the 4th inning of that game. Then threw his helmet and got ejected. And there is no defense for what Cade Cavalli said. I'll leave that part at that, because the part that to me, there's almost not really even a discussion as it relates to Cavalli. But as it relates to Contreras, here is my question for those of you out there who started to buy in maybe a little bit as the Red Sox were winning 5 in a row. And frankly, who might still buy in because I don't know that they're dead yet. They're going to go out to Anaheim. They're going to play an Angels team that's horrible. They could very well win 3 games in a row when they go out there. Even if the task has gotten a little more difficult now with Connolly early ending up on the injured list, which happened today, and also with Peyton Tolley getting slapped around the way he did today. But let me start with this question about Wilson Contreras, and then I want to give you some of the details about what happened last night. Jimmy Stewart, quick question for you. Wilson Contreras, does he help the Red Sox or hurt the Red Sox?
He helps the Red Sox.
Okay. And you mean that in the net?
Yes.
Okay.
He's done more good defensively, offensively, than he has with the negative shenanigans of being overly emotional about things.
Okay, and so, Jimmy, I tend to agree with you. In fact, I did something on Breaking Balls earlier in the week, which is our digital component here of the Baseball Hour, about I talked about this the other night, but Wilson Contreras did in one of his at-bats against the Yankees over the weekend. This goes back to Friday night. To me, illustrates why I want Wilson Contreras on the team, why I think the Red Sox should keep him. What I did say at the same time is I'm not sure I want him as a captain and a leader, but I want his makeup on the roster, along with his bat, which is really the biggest thing.
He cares, and it shows that he cares.
But in the game on Friday, not only does he care, Jimmy, he's willing to lay it on the line. So the game on Friday night against Will Warren, Contreras, and I said this the other night, but I was out last night, so I want to repeat it. Contreras singled in the first inning. He then homered in the third. When he came up the next time, he got first pitch fastball was up and out of the strike zone. The second pitch was up and in, just beyond his nose, as I would say. It wasn't really a threat to hit him in the head, but it was a purpose pitch. Get off the plate. Contreras didn't like it. He rarely likes it when someone throws inside, which he's got a little bit of a hang-up about. I mean, if you're going to stand right on the plate, and I made this comparison the other night, Anthony Rizzo with the Cubs, I think was hit by a pitch, some astronomical number. I'm going to try to punch it up right now so I can.
Contreras and Durbin both led the National League in hit by pitches last year, so this is part of Contreras' game.
Absolutely it is, but my point is not that he gets hit. Anthony Rizzo was hit 222 times in his career.
Feels low.
3 times he led the league. He was hit 30 times in 2015. He was hit 24 times 2 years later, and then 2 years after that, he was hit 27 times. Those were all highest in the league at that time. He was also had 2 seasons where he was hit 23 times, but whatever, you get the idea. 222 times he was hit by a pitch. Anthony Rizzo. I don't ever remember Anthony Rizzo flipping out every time he was hit by a pitch. Now, I'm sure he got upset at some point when he felt like someone was throwing at him intentionally, but he knew that he stood on the plate. He hung over the plate, and he knew part of the price for that was being hit. Contreras reacts emotionally to when anyone throws near him. But the other night, Friday night, with Will Warren of the Yankees, after Contreras was hit, after he was pushed off the plate, up and in, on the next pitch, he moved onto the inside line of the batter's box. His hands were out over the middle of the plate. His elbow was in the strike zone, and I loved every freaking second of it. I thought, this is the kind of guy. Will Warren then, who I think was terrified, threw a slider away off the plate and then ended up walking Contreras, and off to first base he went. And that was the end of that. I will take the guy's compete level and his absolute fearlessness any day of the week. But there are some shenanigans that go along with Contreras that have nothing to do with the fight last night, unless you believe that this is what really precipitated it. In the first inning last night, and if you haven't seen this, go online and look at it, because there wasn't great video of it in game. I had to find it this morning, and even then, both the Nationals broadcast and the Red Sox broadcast went to commercials. But when the first inning ended last night, Contreras was running back to the dugout. Cavalli was coming off the mound. And about halfway down the third baseline, Wilson Contreras made a left turn and cut right in front of Cavalli, which I'm told by players and former players and baseball people who have played the game is a no-no. It's considered to be sort of a like standing over a player either in the NBA or in the NFL after you knock him down, or, you get the idea. It's just disrespectful. And he may or may not have brushed Cavalli when he went by. Now, in response to what happened last night, Nesson showed an extended look at this during the game today when Contreras' first at-bat happened. And Contreras appeared to apologize to Cavalli twice as he was running back to the dugout. Now, I still think he did it on purpose. But apparently that is what pissed off Cavalli. And then when he struck out Contreras, he yelled at him, which was entirely uncalled for, given what he said. You want to say sit down, fine, who gives a rat's ass? But when you start getting into comments like the one he got into last night, then there's no room in the game for that. And to me, I really do wonder whether baseball has to implement some sort of, taunting rule about things that can and cannot be said. I mean, I think we've reached that point. But the point is, at the time of last night, when Contreras crossed paths with Cavalli, with both guys going back to their respective dugouts. Cavalli deemed it disrespectful. At that time, the Red Sox had won the opener 6-3, and they had led that game 6-0 before winning. They held the lead for the entirety of the opener. When it happened, when the incident happened after the first inning, Jimmy, what do we have? Breaking news?
We have breaking news.
Okay, fire away.
This is Breaking Sports News, powered by Valvoline Instant Oil Change on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Well, Tony, Jaylen Brown has a new home. He is being traded to the Philadelphia 76ers for Paul George, 2 first-round picks, and 2 second-round picks, sources tell ESPN.
Okay, so look, I'm going to make an executive decision here.
I co-sign this decision.
Okay, look, you want to call in and talk about Wilson Contreras and the Red Sox, we can do that, but I'd like to spend the entirety of the hour on Jaylen Brown. This is a massive trade in the NBA. It's a massive trade for the Celtics, and it needs to be dissected, analyzed, and talked about right now. So 617-779-0985. We'll talk about Jaylen Brown right up until 7 o'clock. Is Joe Murray coming in tonight, Jimmy?
Yes.
Okay, Joe Murray will take it from there. Jaylen Brown traded to the Philadelphia 76ers for Paul George, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. All right, so now someone's going to tell me, Jimmy, maybe you could look this up. How much money and term left on Paul George's contract and when those picks are is what I'd like to know.
So the picks we don't know yet, but the contract I'll get to in a second.
Okay, so first let me begin right here. I hate it. I hate it with a freaking passion. This was a salary dump or a contract dump, or define it however you want. I'm trying to type and talk at the same time here because of all the names that I was expecting. Paul George was not one of them.
The Celtics saved $3 million on this trade. Jaylen Brown makes 58. Paul George makes 54.
Okay,
I'm sorry, 57 for Jaylen Brown, 54 for Paul George.
Okay, and how much time left on George's contract?
2 years. 2 years on Paul George, 3 years on Jaylen Brown.
This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous trade. Paul George is 36 years old, and to save 1 year of money, 1 year of money, Jimmy, is what you're telling me, that George is getting paid for the next 2.
Yep.
Is there any sort of player option or anything after that?
Not that I'm seeing.
So the Celtics just traded a guy that they took with the number 3 pick in the draft, who's been here 10 years, who's MVP of the NBA Finals, wingman to Jason Tatum, if not his equal, pretty damn close. And they traded him to the Philadelphia 76ers for a 36-year-old guy who looks like he's getting near the end. There was a little bit of a resurgence there in the postseason, but a guy who's been a failure pretty much everywhere he's gone since he left Indiana. 2 firsts and 2 seconds? I hate it. It was a money dump. That's all it was. And the Celtics now today are worse than they were yesterday. I hate it, hate it, hate it. Despise it. I'd want someone to try to justify this deal for me. I would love to get somebody on who can explain to us what the hell the logic was if we have time to do that here in the next 45 minutes. Obviously, this just happened here in a little bit. I hate the effing deal. And this should be proof to you that the Celtics were motivated or incentivized to move the contract with Jaylen Brown. So here are the questions. A, obviously, what do you think of the deal? I hate it. 2, what's behind it if it's not money? What could be behind it? In other words, Jason Tatum has said nothing. This feels like a salary dump, Jimmy, doesn't it? Even if it's just to save 1 year?
Well, so Paul George has a player option. So he's going to opt in year 3 at $56 million.
So they're trading Brown straight up for George, potentially 3 years for 3 years with picks. Oh, my God, I hate it. I hate it. I want to see if we can get someone on to help. I'm borderline stunned by this.
Tony, this is so frustrating because you work so long to build up Tatum and Brown, and you get those 2 max players. You go to the finals twice, and now you're just dumping Jaylen Brown. What? Because the coach and him don't get along? Because he makes too much money? Because Jaylen Brown, $57 million, isn't good enough? Like, that's embarrassing. And the 76ers, of all the teams, like, you're trading him to Philadelphia. Those picks aren't going to be worth anything. They're not going to be worth anything. To get Paul George and 2 picks that might not be worth anything because the lottery system is changing.
They dumped him, Jimmy.
It's embarrassing, Tony.
They dumped him.
It's maddening.
And just look, Paul George is a good three-point shooter. So what does that tell you? He doesn't get many free throw attempts because he doesn't go to the rim, or he hasn't gotten free throw attempts in a long time. Last year, he averaged 3 free throw attempts per game. So if you're worried about the style of basketball the Celtics are going to play, well, guess what? They just brought in another three-point guy. He's 36 years old, to go along with the signings today of Mitchell Robinson and Mike Conley. It doesn't feel like a money dump in the short term, although the Celtics get out from under that 2-year extension for Jaylen Brown that was coming his way. They don't have to deal with that headache. I'm sure they're doing cartwheels over there on Causeway Street about that one. And I add further, and this is a big one for me, bad start for Bill Chisholm and his ownership group. This is the defining moment now of their ownership group at the start of this, coming into this season. Now, look, Jimmy, is there any speculation that Paul George will be flipped?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. I'm going to go on what this is on face value for right now. Jaylen Brown to Philly for Paul George, 2 firsts, 2 seconds. George has 2 years remaining on his deal at basically $54 million and an option for another year. Brown was signed for 3 years. So you basically just swapped Brown for George, picked up some picks, and gotten out of that 2-year, $140 million extension. So what do you think the motivation for the Celtics on this trade was? If I were a Celtics fan hardcore, like many of you out there, I'd be effing pissed. And Bill Chisholm's, the identity of his ownership has just been forged until further notice. 617-779-0985. We'll take your calls next.
The Baseball Hour.
to the Philadelphia 76ers for Paul George, 2 first-round picks, and 2 second-round picks. So think about it if you're Philadelphia. To get Jaylen Brown in the prime of his career at 30 years old for a player in Paul George who has been looked at different points as a negative contract, you are sending out 2 future first-round picks. You're sending out a couple second-round assets. But now you have Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Jaylen Brown, and the way Jaylen Brown has been playing, you would think he has multiple years, 3, 4, 5, 6 years left in his prime. Pair that with a young Tyrese Maxey. Pair that with a young VJ Edgecombe. And for the Celtics, where this had come down to is they tried to trade for Giannis. They offered Jaylen Brown and 2 unprotected first-round picks for Giannis. They missed out. But ever since then, you know what's been interesting? They didn't just stop the conversations there. They continued to have trade talks. And by today, they were actively shopping, full-blown shopping Jaylen Brown around the league, trying to get teams his best offers in. My understanding is Jaylen Brown, throughout all of this, never requested a trade. He never asked out of Boston. This was all the Celtics.
Paul George, who's 36 years old, on the decline, regarded as a bad contract.
A negative contract, Mazz.
How many times has he been moved to in the last 3 or 4 years, Jimmy? Can we look that up quickly?
Pacers, OKC, Clippers, Philadelphia. This is his 5th team, I believe.
Okay, ridiculous. And there's no way to look at this other than to say that the Celtics wanted to get out of the money. And I'm talking long-term money. So we told you earlier, and forgive me, because obviously we're reacting in real time here and trying to process details as we go. But Paul George he's under contract for 1 year with a player option. In all probability, he will pick that up. I had said earlier it was 2 years and an option. It is not. It's 1 year and an option. So $53 million a year. They owe him about $106 million. Jaylen Brown had 3 years left at bigger money. Plus, there was that 2-year extension on the horizon for more than $70 million per year. The Celtics wanted out of the money. That's what they wanted. They wanted out of the long-term money. They were willing to pay 2 years of Paul George and get rid of 3 to 5 years of Jaylen Brown, all for 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks, which in the NBA, if they're in the middle of the first or lower, are borderline useless. Borderline useless. So again, my message to you would be, this to me is the defining first moment of the Bill Chisholm ownership group. That's what this is. The identity of the Bill Chisholm ownership group is now forged. They came in, they bought the team. The first thing they did was dump Jaylen Brown's contract. I shouldn't even say that. After they got rid of Porzingis and Holiday. So you tell me what's going on here. Because I don't know how anybody who's I would love to see how Celtics fans would like to put a happy face on this one. I think this deal sucks. Sucks.
Pags doesn't do this.
Ronnie's in Haverhill. Go ahead, Ronnie. Ronnie, you there? All right, Ronnie's not there. We'll move along. Go quickly. Just ask everyone to be succinct. Nick's in a car. Go ahead, Nick.
Hey, Tony. This is a private equity guy being a private equity guy. He's just stripping down the team. He's got a cheap coach who's terrible, but he's cheap. And now he's looking for a new stadium. All he's doing is making this team as profitable for himself, and hopefully he'll flip it in 5 years. I think that's best case scenario.
I mean, Nick, that's what it feels like. This thing feels like let me dump the money and make what I can out of it, and we'll go that route. You know, Matt McCarthy said something like this early on when they made this, said this guy rips apart companies, sells pieces off, and then, makes them profitable again, and then sells it back. That's certainly what this feels like. Dylan and Winthrop. Go ahead, Dylan.
Mazz, this is ridiculous. All right, and you have all these green teamers, and if they start turning this stuff into, Paul George. No, you know what? I'm a 23-year-old. I'm young enough where I've seen the team with Jaylen Brown and Tatum. Like, these are my childhood guys. Brad Stevens, Chisholm, my faith is lost in all of them. Like, you're going to tell me you're going to dump an all-NBA player of Jaylen Brown's caliber for nothing in a scrap of Paul George into Philadelphia of all the teams. Like, you could have traded him out west.
So, Dylan, I'm going to let you go. At the end of the day, whether it's Philly or anybody else, here's the scary thing. That was the best offer. That was the best you could do. Paul George, 2 firsts and 2 seconds, they should have held on to him. That's what they should have done. But they obviously didn't want to pay him. What else could it be? Unless there was some sort of major personal issue between Tatum and Brown, or Brown and the organization, and the Celtics might now try to spin it that way. That's an old Red Sox trick. When the guy's playing well, let me dump on him after we kick him out the door because we just didn't want to pay him anymore. How else can you look at this? How can anybody possibly be happy with this deal? Again, and to me, this right now is the legacy of, they've only been here a year, of the Bill Chisholm ownership group. 1 year in, Holiday, gone. Porzingis, gone. Now Jaylen Brown, gone. All that money out the door. And, oh, by the way, Paul George, 36. How old's Mike Conley, Jimmy Stewart? Can someone tell me that? He's like closing in on 40, right? 38? Is he like 38 years old?
Yeah, 39 when the season starts.
Okay, so Mike Conley, in theory, like spring chicken compared to, Paul George, spring chicken compared to Mike Conley. 36, 38. And Mitchell Robinson, I think, is 27. But You know what? His knees might as well be 38.
And his basketball IQ isn't great either.
Oh, my God, I hate it. And the previous caller said something about Brad Stevens. This was not a Brad Stevens decision. Listen, Stevens was clearly told we're not paying that. So, and I'm not trying to exempt Brad Stevens because he should have tried harder for Giannis if that was the case. They should have given up Shireman and Ugo and gotten Giannis and at least made a run at it while Jason Tatum was still in his prime. Oh, my gosh, I hate it. I can't tell you how much I hate it. John's in the car. Go ahead, John.
This makes Donnie Sweeney's trade look like he drafted Cam Neely, Bobby Orr, and Ray Bork all in the same draft compared to this move, Tony, because this is unbelievable.
John, why do you think this deal happened?
Very simple, Tony, because Tatum doesn't want him here. Period. He's done with them, and they don't have the balls to trade Tatum and get rid of Missoula, so Brown had to go, and this is what they came up with. You are absolutely right. They gave him one shot, and he couldn't get out to Tecumpo, so they told him, dump the salary for whatever it is, and this is how we're going to do it. Get used to rooting for the Red Sox, guys. Get used to it.
Oh, gosh, again, Shams Charania said that they were getting offers of 40 cents on the dollar for Jaylen Brown. Is it possible that this feels like less? Paul George, 36-year-old Paul George, for 30-year-old Jaylen Brown, who finished, was it 5th or 6th in the MVP voting?
6th, but should have been 4th because 2 others shouldn't have been on the MVP ballot.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You want to start talking about decisions franchises have made in Boston sports history over the years? This one's right up there. Letting this guy go or getting rid of this guy? Boy, is that a bad sign if you are a Celtics fan. Bad, bad, bad. Kevin Majori's got your headlines. When we come back, Brian Robb of Mass Live is going to join.
here. But Jaylen Brown, 2 years removed from Finals MVP.
Right.
Just last season, he was a finalist for the league MVP.
Yeah.
And so the Sixers hung around in this conversation. The Celtics talked to a few other organizations, but today they locked in on this deal. They get back Paul George to bring in with Jason Tatum, so you'll see both of those guys on the wings.
Yes.
But they are moving on in another direction.
Oh, stop with the crap about Paul George still having something in the tank. Good grief. I know Shams. I mean, I don't know him, but you know what I mean. I know he's got a job to do, but holy crap. This trade is horrible. Horrible. I want to bring in Brian Robb from Mazz Live, but before we do that, there is some detail here on the pick compensation that the Celtics are getting, if you even care. Jimmy, do you know who this guy is? Jake Fisher. You ever hear of this guy?
Oh, he's an NBA scribe.
Okay,
he's good.
so forgive me, I don't. But from Philadelphia, 2028 first round pick, Phillies pick that could be swapped. 2031 unprotected Philadelphia first and 2 second rounders, 2028 and 2030. Who gives a rat's ass? And the fossil that is Paul George, 36 years old. Good grief. I'd love to hear the Celtics spin this one. Again, this to me is ownership getting out of the 3 to 5 years of Jaylen Brown for 2 years of Paul George. At the end of the day, that's what this is. They would have had to pay Brown 3 to 5 years. He was eligible for an extension here in Jimmy, a handful of days, right? Later this month?
Yeah, that's right.
So they clearly wanted to get out of that. They didn't want to be saddled with that responsibility. They knew they'd probably have to pick it up or the player would be pissed. And again, unless there was some sort of behind-the-scenes thing we don't know about, which I'm sure is going to be hyped up to no end now to make it look better, there was nothing wrong with this player here. They've been telling us that for years. Nothing wrong with the player. Brian Robb, Mazz Live. B-Rob, I appreciate you joining us on really short notice. So give us your 2 cents. How surprised are you?
This is Thunder. I was actually just starting to parse through this afternoon the rest of the league and start looking at places that, we hadn't been talking about over the last week or so. If they're really going to go off the board here, where would they go? I never thought we'd get to Philly, to be very honest, because this is a level of return that just shows you what Jaylen Brown's value was across the league, and B, what the Celtics, were clearly ready to move on from Jaylen no matter what in this scenario.
Right. So, B-Rob, isn't that really the story, that they were, at the end of the day, they were willing to take just about anything to get rid of him? Why?
I think it's clear they were ready to move on. And so they've had, for years now, we've seen the Tatum-Brown duo have some real success. But I think at the end of the day now, I don't think they think that Jaylen Brown was worthy of that Supermax contract that he was on. And so at that point, you see what you can get for him. You try to rebuild some draft capital, but in the process, they realize, okay, they think you're selling at a high value for him coming off the season he just had, but in turn, his contract just made it so where this is an acceptable return for them, which was Paul George. I think before the season started, I think this contract was viewed as one of the worst in the NBA, period. And he had a pretty nice end of the season, and certainly a great postseason run. He outplayed Jaylen Brown in the first round, but he's also 36 years old. And he's also making $54.1 million next year. So you still have an albatross of a contract on your roster here. It's just it ends a year sooner, and you have a couple more first-round picks to go with it. So it's clear that by taking an offer like this was just the Celtics saying we want to start building this thing differently, and the future did not involve Jaylen Brown.
Okay, so B-Rob, again, Brian Robb of Mazz Live joining us here, and obviously everybody reacting. We're on the fly a little bit as it relates to this story. Jaylen Brown to Philadelphia for 36-year-old Paul George and 4 draft picks, 2 firsts, 2 seconds. And on top of it, B-Rob, you already know this, but for the benefit of our listeners, Jaylen Brown is eligible for a 2-year Supermax extension that would have been in the range of, I think it was $142, $143 million, somewhere in that area. That's
right. Yep.
I presume he would have wanted now. Did the Celtics fear giving him that? What was, in other words, George is going to be here for 2 years. At a minimum, or I mean maximum too. I can't envision them re-signing him. But under the terms of his current deal, he can opt in and get the second year. So they save 1 year of salary straight up and then maybe 2 years on that extension. That had to be the impetus for this, right? As far as you know, was there any problem behind the scene with Brown and the organization or Brown and Jason Tatum?
No, I think this is, honestly, Matt, I think this was largely a basketball decision from the Celtics standpoint in terms of how they want to build this thing going forward. And that's obviously a very debatable topic in terms of what you're looking at the return here. Paul George is not a nobody, but he's also 36 years old. And the Celtics certainly hope he has something left in the tank here. But when you trade a 29-year-old for a 36-year-old, that says a lot about in terms of what you think about the 29-year-old.
Yeah, so B-Rob, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but then how is that a basketball decision? George is a wing who's a three-point shooter. Stevens has said they wanted to get better at the rim. Based on the numbers I was looking at, George doesn't get to the free throw line a crap ton. It's only 3 free throw attempts. He feels like nothing more than a shooter. And how does this alter their roster or the way they want to play dramatically by replacing Brown with George?
It's essentially you get Jalen's contract off your books and you start to build a team in a different way. Like you get these first round picks, you get a guy here, and then can you do something else with George's contract because he's only got 2 years left? It's a very underwhelming return. Don't get me wrong. But I think this is like the next step to what the Celtics are trying to do and recenter this thing around Tatum. And it's a scary thought because you had 2 All-Stars here ready to go. There's one direction they clearly could have taken this in, and you got Mitchell Robinson this afternoon. You could have made some other tweaks around the edges, but now this is going the other way here. Maybe they didn't think once they dangled Jalen out here over the last week and a half, they thought that this was not going to be repairable to a degree that they would have liked in this situation, putting the two-face back in the two, if you will. So this is one where you're getting back. It's not going to, the return obviously looks bad. And so how they maximize it from here is a big question, but it's certainly a pretty unexpected proposition here to take this type of play return on top of the underwhelming draft return after putting the ask out there for 4 or 5 first-round picks.
Okay.
To begin this process.
So, but I just want to make sure that I understand you properly. So when you say they want to change the way they play basketball, you mean they didn't want max contracts committed to 2 wings, each making, call it $60 to $70 million for the long term. And so they decided to cut bait with Brown now. So it's about roster composition. And in terms of finances, I think this is money, B-Rob. I think it's purely money.
Yeah, I mean, money's in terms of how you want to build it. Like they clearly, you don't think Jaylen Brown is worthy of this contract if you're giving him away for this type of return.
Wow.
And you have to take back another not palatable contract here, so it can't be totally motivated by money. But like you said, you chop off a year on the Supermax here. Maybe we'll see what the future lies for George here, if they plan to keep him, if they plan to move him out separately. We'll find that out down the line. But this is, in my mind, like you clearly don't want to give. You certainly didn't want to give Jaylen Brown that extension, but you also just you don't think Tatum and Brown are 2 guys you can build around at the money they're going to be asking for the rest of their prime. So this is the first step in the process from getting back from that and centering this thing around Jason Tatum now. And it's going to be, there's clearly some work to be done, but this is going to be a first step in a pretty jarring process. And the fact that they traded him to the Sixers too, Mazz, there's one thing to trade Jalen away. It's another to trade him away to your direct rival, who has Tyrese Maxey and Edgecombe, to team up with those guys for the foreseeable future. So that just adds another fascinating layer to this decision.
So, B-Rob, look, I agree. I'm less concerned about that part of it because to me, you take the best offer. So the fact that they traded him in division and got a bad return tells me that that's the best they could do. They should have kept him, in my opinion. But before I let you go, let me do this because I got to give way to Joe Murray here in a minute. But my personal opinion is that this is a damaging start for the Bill Chisholm ownership group. Holiday's gone. Porzingis is gone. I think fans were willing to accept that. Many people were not, but I think some fans were willing to accept that at the beginning because, okay, got to get out of the apron, got to reset the payroll, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now Brown goes out the door. Is this the early identity of the Bill Chisholm ownership group, that they're going to do it a lot differently than the Wick Grousbeck group did it?
I think it all depends on where Brad takes it from here. Like, they're not saving a lot of money here in the short term, as like Paul George makes $3 million less than Brown this season. So it's what you do with that. Like, what do they do these first round picks? Are they going to be a team that continues to spend into the tax in the next couple of years here as they're trying to maximize Jason Tatum's prime, but they're going to do it with different pieces? Or they really think that Paul George is a better fit next to Jaylen Brown? And again, that it would be a shopping development, but maybe in their heart of hearts, in terms of how these guys have coexisted or what they can put around those guys going forward, that might be something that they want to, experiment with down the line. Since the on-off numbers are what they are over the years, like the Celtics have always been better with, when Jaylen Brown has been off the floor. There's so many weird ways to look at that. Obviously, very factors there, but when push comes to shove here, I think we're going to see how this ownership spends, what Brad Stevens has in store with building around Jason Tatum going forward, because now this is clearly all centered around him. And the fact is they didn't think Jaylen Brown was good enough here at 57, 60, pushing $70 million on his next contract.
Crazy.
To be that second guy when you don't have to put a supporting cast like Drew Holiday, Porzingis, and Al Horford around that guy. That they're not capable of putting that type of team around this anymore in the second apron era.
B-Rob, I hate it. I hate it. Listen, I know you. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it like poison. I hate it. I know you got a lot of work to do, so thank you for joining us.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mazz.
Okay. Brian, Rob, Mazz Live again. I know Joe Murray's going to have a lot to say about this as the night goes on. I'm sure he'll try to get guests on as well. For those of you just joining, again, and I know many of you already know this, Jaylen Brown has been traded to the Philadelphia 76ers for Paul George and 4 draft picks. 2 first-rounders and 2 second-rounders, I believe, beginning in 2028. So you're not even going to get any of the picks anytime soon. On top of that, George has this year and an option remaining on his contract. It's a player option, which means he will likely pick it up. So Paul George is effectively signed for 2 years at roughly $53 or $54 million per year. So call it 2 years and $106, $107 million. Jaylen Brown had 3 years left at more than that, certainly $60 million plus per, and was eligible for a 2-year extension. So to wrap this up for you in a nice little bow, 3 to 5 years of Jaylen Brown ranging from $60 to $72 million. Gone out the door. 3 to 5 years of Jaylen Brown at age 30 out the door. 2 years of Paul George at age 36 coming in at $53 million, $54 million per, and 4 draft picks, 2 in the first, 2 in the second. I hate it like poison. Hate it. I never thought the Celtics would do this kind of thing to their roster with Jason Tatum in the peak and prime years of his career. Normally, baseball hour, as you know, this was extenuating circumstances. Major trade made by the Celtics tonight. Joe Murray will have you for the balance of the night. For those of you that are on the line, please sit tight because I know Joe's going to be eager to speak with you. Kevin Majori will get you caught up on headlines.
Come celebrate America's 250th at the 99